Hi everyone, Carmen Murphy with Sampson Properties. Welcome to my back porch. This month I've got a couple of things to talk to you about. I want to do a quick market update, remembering that we're going to be looking at year-over-year numbers from April 2020 to April 2021. It's really not a very fair comparison because April 2020 was 100% the height of all of the lockdowns. There was a lot of uncertainty, both in terms of how the pandemic was going to go, what was causing it, how long things were going to be locked down, and how contagious everything was. There was an enormous amount of fear, and so it's almost not a fair comparison, but it is in a way that you can see that we have come so far in that last year. And we're so grateful for that. And we're grateful to see that right now there are things that are opening up, and the interest rates are still very low at the moment. If you're going to be in it for the long term, and I would not suggest, if you're out buying right now, I would not suggest that you go buy something unless you're planning on being there for the next 7 to 10 years if you're taking out a loan. The prices are still expected to increase because it's really a supply and demand issue. It is not anything like the Great Recession. I know that that's been one of the most Googled questions recently is, are we in a housing bubble? And the short answer is no. We are at a time in our history where over the last decade, we built fewer houses than probably over the last 5 decades. There's very few decades where we were looking at, 10 million or so being built per decade, and we built maybe 6 million over the last decade. So at the same time that the largest group of buyers in history is going out onto the market. So right now, it's definitely a supply and demand issue. We'll look closely at that in the next couple of weeks. But for right now, I do want to address the condo fee issue that I've been asked about repeatedly. So let's take a quick look at where we are. You have this attachment, so I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on it, but it is nice to take a look. Frederick County's prices, so this is the April to April, and this is the year over year. So let's kind of take a look at these numbers, and let me just tell you, Frederick has seen an exponential growth simply because it's close enough in that people can still commute, or they are not commuting or commuting once a week, but still a nice low-valued community, but they've seen exponential growth out there. Howard County, 7.7% over the last year. The Mid-Atlantic region's gone up 11.9%. Montgomery County, 9.8%. But let's take a look at this number here, folks. This 535 is the average sales price of a single-family house in Montgomery County right now. So this is not for the faint of heart, for sure. And the other thing is there's so much cash going into these houses. It's astounding. Whether, there's probably, I would say probably 1/4 to 1/3% of all deals out there right now are cash. But the ones that are financed are at least 20% down. And in some cases, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70% down. It's just amazing the amount of cash that's going in there. So are we going to see a crash? No. There is too much equity in these houses. Washington, D.C., again, we're significantly up. Okay, let's take a look at the condo and HOA fees. When you buy into a condo, there are 2 things that I tell all my buyers. First of all, you want to look very carefully at the budget. yeah, you probably want to look at some of the rules, but really and truly, you do want to spend quite a bit of time looking at that budget. Look at their reserves, look at their upcoming cash expenditures. If you can't see in the documents what they have done over the last 5 years and where they've spent their money and where they think their money is going to be coming from, you need to pick up the phone and start asking questions of that management association, because that is absolutely something that you need to really have an answer to. And the other thing is, you can complain all you want about the board, but it's really helpful to you to sit on that board and to know where your money is going, to really be a part of that process. It's one thing to say, oh, these people don't know what they're doing. And to be quite frank, that is possible. But in a lot of these boards, you do have people who care very deeply because they're going to be there for a long time. Now, the nice thing about a building that does have higher fees is you're not going to get a whole lot of renters in there, because in order to rent in that building, that fee would have to be covered per month. So your rent's going to be a little bit on the higher side. People generally don't want to do that unless it's a building that's very, very amenity rich. A lot of your fees are going to go to labor and staffing. So if you are in a high-rise building with a security desk, your 24-hour security is going to cost a little bit more. Most of those buildings also have a pool. A pool is going to cost a little bit more. And if you have a pool, you're going to have higher insurance rates. So your master policy is going to cost more. And we know that insurance rates have skyrocketed in the country over the last 5 years. The other thing is, you need to take a look at what the non-payment rate is. A lot of times that's going to affect, what the fees are going to be. So the delinquency rate is pretty important. It's also going to affect the ability to get financing if you're financing that condo. We always see in the what's covered in the condo association something called CAM, the Common Area Maintenance. Now, that generally has to do with building exteriors, building grounds, the hallways, anything that is walls out from your unit. So all the pipes that are behind the walls of your unit, those are covered under your common area. And so, if there's a boiler to heat those hallways, there's a cost for that. That needs to be maintained or it needs to be replaced. They'll generally last 30, 40, 50 years. How old is your building? What's the piping like going into your building? If you're buying into a new building, they're starting to build their reserve funds. So their fees, might not be the cheapest, just in terms of, oh my gosh, it's a brand new building. Why am I paying $350 a month and it's a garden style building and I don't have a fitness facility? Remember that as of day one, that roof, that carpeting in the hallway, the wood stairs, those are all things that are under wear and tear starting at day one. And just like in a normal house, if you look back every year over what you're spending to maintain your house, you have the same cost, only exponentially larger on a condo. The management company is also something that you need to look into. Are people mostly satisfied with their management company? Is their management company doing a good job? Are the utilities included? The cost of utilities has gone up, but sometimes you can buy, if your whole condo is in it, you might be able to buy cheaper utilities. You might look into having solar panels. Fitness centers, the roofs, the pathways. Are there ADA requirements that they have not met that need to be brought up? And then remember that once you have expended money, you have to rebuild it, because if you replace the roof this year, you may have to replace the boiler in 5, and that's not going to be cheap. So that's something else that you're going to be looking at. You know, what's the state of your party room? Do you need new furniture for it? Is the shared kitchen, is that in good shape? Does that need parts replaced as well? There are also limited common elements, which means that it's something that's shared by the condominium, but exclusively for your use. Now, in some condos, that would be your parking space or a garage space. Some of them are separately deeded, but if it's an assigned space, then generally it's a limited common element. In some buildings, a balcony is a limited common element. It's covered by the association, so when you say, oh, my association pays for that, that's because it's a limited common element. And you know, if you have an issue where the balconies all need to be replaced or the windows all need to be replaced, those are things that are specific to your unit, but that are paid for by the association. Then you have your whole general common elements. And if you're in a community like the Lakelands or the Kentlands or Leisure World or Manchester Farms, those are planned unit developments, and they have outside costs, not just for your condo itself, but for the whole community. For instance, in Leisure World, you're paying for road maintenance. You're paying for all those beautiful trees and flowers that are planted. You're paying for the landscaping staff to be there. That fitness facility that was just built, you know, from the ground up a couple of years ago, that was something that they built, and now they've got to start rebuilding those reserves. So have condo association fees gone up significantly over the last 5 years? I'm going to say yes. Are some of them not justified? Probably. Are a lot of them justified? Definitely. And for the ones that have very low fees, that's another trigger that you should be really looking out for, because a low fee can mean that they have very low reserves, and that if something does happen, if the boiler unexpectedly goes, if the roof unexpectedly springs a leak, if there is flooding and drainage issues in the land and it needs to be re-landscaped, that could be a special assessment. And when you go to sell that property, chances are you, the seller, may have to pay for a lot of that special assessment or a good portion of it. That was, you know, an assessment that happened during the time that you took that you were the owner of that property, and a lot of buyers are not buying a condo that has a special assessment that's not paid. So that was a really interesting set of questions that I've looked into over the last couple of months. And if you have more questions, please keep them coming and I will answer them. If you found that this was a valuable video, please share it. I'm happy to answer any of your friends' questions as well. And until next month, I'm Carmen Murphy, and this is My Back Porch. See you soon.